Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I am doing this series called the Decades of Action Challenge. It is inspired in part by the Epic Film Challenge that is being practiced by Razorwire Reviews and Forkaball, their channels here on YouTube. What they do on that series is they talk about entries in a book called 1001 Movies You Must See Before You Die. Picking an entry and watching it, making a video about it, and I'm doing kind of the same thing, except that I'm using a different source. Tom Breihan is a writer. He actually writes for a number of different sites, like Pitchfork, but he's doing a series for avclub.com called A History of Violence, which is all about what he considers the most important action movie of each year, starting with 1968 and moving forward to the present. He'll get around to 2016 this December, and he might do an entry for 2017 as well. We'll see. So I've been doing a video a week, going through the entries of each year and looking at them, some of them for the first time, and making a video about them. And the pick today, of course, is Raiders of the Lost Ark, which is not a movie that I've seen only one time before, never before, but I've seen at least a dozen times, if not more. I've probably seen it quite a few times. The last time I watched this movie was in, I believe, 2011. There was a re-release of the movie for its 30th anniversary. It was at the Music Box Theater in Chicago, and it was actually the first time that I ever saw the movie on a properly shaped screen. Up until that point, I'd either seen the cropped version on VHS or TV, or I'd seen the letterboxed version on, disc. Or I'd actually gone to see it in the IMAX theater, but again, the IMAX theater isn't the right shape. It's kind of square, whereas the movie is anamorphic widescreen, 2:3:5:1, the rectangular shape, the extremely rectangular shape of a lot of big budget spectacle-driven movies like this. And the Music Box was able to show the movie in its proper shape, which is nice. Not that I was missing image area, but it's just nice to be able to see the movie without having that empty black space above and below the image like normal. Which is not supposed to be normal. It's supposed to be shown on a 2:3:5 screen. Anyway, really enjoyed it, of course. I think the scene that I liked the best at that time, the one that I enjoyed the most at that screening, was the one where Indiana Jones goes to the map room and uses the Staff of Ra to find the location of the Well of Souls, and the score with all those vocals going was particularly great in the surround sound and everything like that. I've had a lot of great experiences seeing this movie over the years, including the first time I ever saw it, which was at a birthday party, which happened to be my birthday. And I was the only kid there that hadn't seen the movie yet. All my friends who were there had already seen the movie and were telling me things about, okay, Scott, this scene will teach you not to stick your fingers in a fan. And I'm like, okay. Yeah, it was scary. It was really exciting. Man, I couldn't get enough of that. It was just one of the greatest things ever, and to this day it remains one of my favorite movies of all time. I haven't really updated my top 20 favorite movies of all time list, but last time I did, it's like number 8. Yeah, pretty high up there, and remains to this day my favorite Steven Spielberg film. Although, having just rewatched it as I do, I noticed a lot more issues with it, lots more logical flaws, but I mean, with a movie like this, if you're looking for logical flaws, you're just cheating yourself out of a good time. And I know that there are plenty of movies that people would argue about that as well. In particular, The Rock. The Rock is a movie which came out about 15 years after Raiders of the Lost Ark, and I made it my business to find all the logical flaws that I could find in that movie because I hated it so much. And a friend of mine, a few weeks back, we were talking on Facebook, and he's just like, man, this is just one of those movies you just got to enjoy, Don't worry about the logical flaws. It's just a good time. Raiders of the Lost Ark doesn't hold up if you really, really examine it carefully. It's just a good time. Enjoy it. I mean, he wasn't comparing it with Raiders, I am, because I noticed something else really interesting about this movie. Because I've been watching all these other movies starting with 1968 and moving forward, I've noticed this dramatic change in style from one year to the next. I've been watching Enter the Dragon and The Octagon with Chuck Norris, and Bullet, and what was the one from The Driver, the Walter Hill film, The Driver, And they seem to be much more languidly paced than Raiders of the Lost Ark. Raiders of the Lost Ark is a movie which has two huge set pieces back to back, pretty much. I mean, you have this scene where Indiana Jones is fighting a couple guys outside of this runaway plane that's about to explode because of a gas leak, and then as soon as that's over, you immediately go into the infamous truck chase with no time to breathe or anything like that. And this must have been quite startling for people who watched this back in the day. They're like, oh, you know, Steven Spielberg, he did Jaws, this should be fun. And they probably had no idea what they were getting into. The sheer intensity, just the sheer amount of, you know, action and stunts and you know, narrow escapes that are being thrown at you every single minute. I mean, people were amazed just by the opening sequence. That's a scene with two guys in a cave. That's it, okay? This movie gets much bigger, much crazier after this. And I couldn't help thinking, hey, I'm starting to understand why people like The Rock so much now. The Rock was super annoying when I saw it. I was really irritated when I first saw that movie because the style of it was just sort of like, you know, Michael Bay beating my head in with what he was throwing at me. It was like, it wasn't just the action, it was the music, it was the camera movement and the lighting. And I mean, I thought that the story was pretty stupid as it was, but I mean, the style of the movie made everything so much worse. And when I think about people watching like movies from like the late 70s, you know, action movies, you know, sort of adventure films like the ones I've been watching, and also, you know, James Bond films and the like, they're not nearly as relentless as Raiders is. So to have this suddenly thrown at them is just like, whoa, this is amazing. I never knew movies could be this fast, have this much packed in them and everything like that. And so a lot of people, when The Rock came out 15 years later, probably felt the exact same way. You know, they hadn't seen a movie that was, as far as the style goes and the pace and the tone of it, this relentless, this sort of insistent. My dad actually told me many years later when I was a teenager that he really wasn't a big fan of John Williams. John Williams, of course, did the score for all the Star Wars movies and the Superman movies with Christopher Reeve, and a lot of the Spielberg movies, almost all the Spielberg movies are scored by him. And Raiders of the Lost Ark is one of my favorite scores ever. You know, I mean, it's just so amazing. So many great cues in this movie. Not just the themes, but also the other little bits of, you know, that play in the background of some of the big action scenes. And even the non-action scenes have great music as well. In particular, the scene where Marion kicks Indy out of the bar, and then she sits by herself and pulls the medallion out from underneath her clothes. You know, she's been wearing it the whole time. And the music in that scene is really good. And my dad told me years later that he doesn't like John Williams because John Williams gooses the audience's emotions a little bit too much. It's a little bit too insistent on the audience feeling a certain way. And, you know, I felt like The Rock is a kind of movie which takes not only the score, but everything else about the movie and really is insistent on the audience feeling a certain way. Now, David Fincher has said that it's the job of a movie director to emotionally manipulate the audience, especially if you're making a thrill ride, an action movie, a thriller, some sort of a suspense, anything like that. He's very good at that. But there are times when the efforts of the director and all the people who are working for him can be a little bit too transparent. And just, you know, like I said, with Rocco, I felt I was being beat over the head with, okay, now here's the part where you're supposed to feel excited, and this is the part where you're supposed to feel scared, and this is where you're supposed to feel sad, and this is where you're supposed to feel patriotic. And it's just like, will you give me a break? Will you stop already? Just cool it, you know? You do not know the meaning of the word subtlety, Mr. Bay. And so, you know, by comparison, a movie like Raiders of the Lost Ark is just like, you know, it's like a Terrence Malick film compared to Michael Bay, you know. But I get it. I kind of understand now why people liked The Rock so much and still like it. Because of the style was something newer and even more exciting and even more amped up than what they were normally used to, and they were into that. I wasn't into that. I'm still not really into it, although I've enjoyed Michael Bay style techniques in other movies that maybe weren't as stupid, maybe a little bit more engaging, had better stories or what have you. But with Raiders, it's just like, you know, I sort of get why people would get into that and why some people would find it a little bit too overbearing if they were used to, you know, seeing the movies, the style of films that had come out prior to then. I don't know. That's my new thought, my fresh thought on Raiders of the Lost Ark. Aside from that, I don't have a lot of fresh thoughts other than the fact that it's great. You know, it's so much fun. The scene with the coat hanger. You know, like I said, I just rewatched the movie a couple hours ago, and oh my goodness, I laughed so hard at the coat hanger scene. I just thought it's so hilarious. And if you haven't seen Raiders of the Lost Ark for some reason, I won't give it away. I won't tell you exactly what I mean by the coat hanger scene. But, you know, if you're a fan of Spielberg, if you're a fan of action movies, adventure movies, movies with lots of stunts and anything like that, Raiders of the Lost Ark is absolutely essential viewing. It's not a must-see. It is essential. Absolutely. You know, there's no question about it. You know, if you don't know the story... Where have you been? But seriously, some of you may not know, so I'll get into it, okay? The Ark of the Covenant, basically, is the chest, the mythical chest that apparently held the Ten Commandments, the stone tablets bearing the Ten Commandments that Moses received from God and then placed in there afterwards. They were carried around, basically, in this chest. So the Ark contains the Ten Commandments. And Hitler... in 1936, is after it. He wants the Ark of the Covenant, possibly because it's, you know, got some occult value, you know, it's valuable in some way, but also because the story is that the Ark actually can produce some kind of deadly energy that can wipe out, you know, armies, and any army which, as they say in the movie, which carries the Ark before it is invincible. You know, it can't be defeated. So he wants it as sort of a, you know, a tool for waging warfare or something like that. Who knows? You know, Hitler's crazy. He's Hitler. So the American government goes to this university professor named Indiana Jones, Dr. Indiana Jones, and says, hey, we've learned that the Nazis are trying to get the Ark of the Covenant. Why don't we give you some money to go get it yourself before they do? And he's like, sure, yeah, I'll do it. Indiana Jones, of course, is played by Harrison Ford, who played Han Solo as well. And aside from these two characters, his only other franchise was as Jack Ryan. In the mid-90s, he did a couple of Jack Ryan movies. The Patriot Games and Clear and Present Danger. And there were a couple other guys, Alec Baldwin and Ben Affleck, both played that character before and then after Harrison Ford did. But yeah, he's most well known, obviously, for playing Han Solo and for Indiana Jones. And he's a fun character. Not a... kind of you know, he's somebody who isn't prone to quitting easily, and that serves him well when he's you know, learns that the Ark of the Covenant in this crate has been loaded onto a truck and it's going to have this huge Nazi escort, you know, with guys on motorcycles and jeeps all guarding it. He goes and he takes on the thing all by himself. He rides a horse into the thick of battle and takes over the truck from the Nazis and fights off all the Nazis that are climbing all over him, shooting at him any way he can. You know, this scene... I mean, I've seen the movie Raiders of the Lost Ark a bunch of times, but the scene itself I've watched maybe 50 times, at least 50 times. And I've just watched it again, and it's still just as great as it ever was, despite all the fact that they go from open desert to jungle to open desert to jungle in like the blink of an eye, which doesn't make any sense, but it doesn't matter because it's so much fun. Yeah. How does Indy survive the ride on the submarine? How does he get from the secret Nazi island back to the States? Who knows? Who cares? Really. Man, it's really something else. I also want to mention Karen Allen, who not only played a character in the first Indiana Jones movie, but the last one that came out in 2008. Marion is like his former girlfriend, and I was a little confused, actually, because I sort of couldn't remember exactly the relationship that she had with this guy who Indiana Jones was a colleague of. His name is Abner Ravenswood, and he's played by John Hurt in The Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, but I couldn't... I think he was her father, but I also was concerned that he had an affair with Indiana Jones and broke up this engagement that she had. She was going to be married to this other guy. I thought, wait a minute, no, is Abner her fiance? No, Abner's her father. I just got confused about that. I couldn't understand what was happening. But the fiance really is never mentioned. Anyway, when Indiana Jones has an affair with Marion, Abner's daughter and breaks up the marriage, that kind of ruins the relationship between him and Abner, her father, and so they have a falling out. Yeah, I was a little confused about that. I think I've got it all straight now. They never mentioned the name of the guy that she was going to get married to or was in love with or whatever their relationship status was. But Marion's such a great character, and Karen Allen's just fantastic in the role. Indiana Jones takes a lot of punches in the Indiana Jones movies, but he's never taken a better punch than the one that Marion gives him when he meets her at the bar in Nepal after how many years that they haven't seen each other. Bam! She hits him hard, and he's really surprised, and it's a great, great punch, you know. The one thing that I didn't really like as much this time was the fight scene that breaks out in the bar, actually, when the Nazis, Tote, the mysterious kind of creepy Nazi guy who dresses entirely in black, shows up and threatens her. And that's a great build-up in the scene, but the gunfight and the fight that takes place after that is kind of incoherent. Don't like it as much as the other ones, you know, but it really doesn't take away anything from the movie as a whole. Of course, you've got a bunch of other supporting characters who appeared in the later Indiana Jones movies, especially The Last Crusade. In the third one, you had a couple of key supporting characters come back, as well as Sean Connery came on board as Indiana Jones's father. But Karen Allen didn't show up until the last one. I'm getting a little off track here. Anyway, I think I've expressed my enthusiasm about this movie enough. If you'd like to read Tom Breihan's article that's linked below, he was actually trying to decide between 3 different movies, one of which was Escape from New York, which had another very iconic character, you know, debut, and, you know, kind of was inspired a lot of other 80s action hero characters. Snake Plissken, played by Kurt Russell. The other one was The Road Warrior, a.k.a. the second Mad Max movie. Even though most people would consider that a 1982 movie, it actually came out in Australia, its native country, in 1981, and therefore Breihan considered it an 81 movie, and so instead of giving it its own essay in 1982, it went up against Raiders and Lost. He picked Raiders of the Lost Ark because it was the biggest, fastest, silliest movie of the 3, and therefore was the most influential. Not to mention it was the biggest grosser, and, you know, inspired, you know, the most enthusiasm, I guess. Of course, all 3 of those movies have their hardcore fan base, and well deserved too. I'm not a huge fan of Escape from New York, but there's stuff that I like about it. And The Road Warrior is certainly good too, and I'd love to be able to do a video on that at some point. But the next movie, the one that's actually Breihan's choice for 1982, is the first Rambo movie, Sylvester Stallone in First Blood, directed by Ted Kotcheff. That's going to be the video for next week, and I hope you'll tune in for that. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you'd like to check out my Facebook page, I got the link below to that as usual. Also the link to the playlist in which I have all the videos that I've done so far for this series. Thank you very much for watching, and if you haven't seen Raiders of the Lost Ark, I wanted to show you something really quick. Okay, this is the DVD package. Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. That's not the title of the movie, okay? The only reason they put that on here is so people who don't know anything about Indiana Jones will know that it's an Indiana Jones movie. The title is Raiders of the Lost Ark. You watch the movie, all it says is Raiders of the Lost Ark. Indiana Jones is not in the title of the movie, just to be clear on that. But if you haven't seen this movie, please, like I said, it's essential, especially if you're a fan of action-adventure movies. Thank you. Thank you for watching. I'll see you again next week when we do my video on First Blood. Later.